Howdy, it's Jim Morado, and this is early August 2022, and we're going by the Mary Todd Lincoln House. Right there it is, here in Lexington, Kentucky. And there's a picture I took of it, I think in 2010. I've been here several times. Of course, Mary Todd Lincoln, former First Lady, married to Abraham Lincoln, known for, dealing with quite a bit. As First Lady, she was present for the death of several of her sons, the assassination of her husband, and she had health issues of her own. Anyway, I wanted to go by here real quick and make a quick video. They're doing self-guided tours right now, and unlike previously, they're allowing video. You can take videos inside. So I swung by here the other day and did a quick tour, and I thought I'd give you a tour with me. I hope you enjoy it. Lots of placards to read. So I thought I'd read these to you as we explore the house. And we're about to see a photo from 1976, before they started restoring the house. And it notes one of the oldest structures in Lexington. This building dates to 1803 to 1806. French immigrant William Palmeter built and operated it as an inn and tavern until financial troubles forced him to sell the property. The Todd family bought this house in 1832 when Mary was 13. The property had several outbuildings. None of those structures survived. The Todds also purchased a lot on the east side of the house where they planted a flower garden. 10 years after Mary moved to Illinois, her father died and the family sold the house and most of its contents. Later occupants of the building included residents and businesses, from a brothel to a grocery store. By 1970, a hardware store was using the building for storage. And we're actually now in the parlor, and we'll take a quick look around and I'll give you some info here. And on the wall you see the miniature portrait of Elizabeth Betsy Humphreys, circa 1840. Betsy Humphreys married Robert Todd in 1826, when Mary was 7. Betsy grew up in a prominent family in Frankfort, Kentucky. As a young woman, she taught in a Sunday school for girls and enjoyed traveling. Many biographers have argued that Mary did not get along with her stepmother, but one family member wrote how much they had in common. Robert Wood Dodge painted the miniature. There's also a daguerreotype of Robert Todd, 1840s. This photo pictures Robert during the last decade of his life. In those years, he co-owned a cotton factory and worked as a bank president. Elected to several terms in the Kentucky legislature, he was running for a second Senate term in 1849 when he died. A couple of notes there. And about the wallpaper you see in the house. It is based on a design found in the Bodley Bullock House in downtown Lexington. Built in 1811 or 12, the house was purchased by Thomas Bodley in 1814. Robert Todd clerked with him before being admitted to the bar in 1811, and Mary attended school with a Bodley daughter in the 1830s. The paper was produced by Wolf House Wallpapers in Mount Vernon, Ohio. And the tall case clock, 1825 to 30. Robert Todd owned a clock, but this cherry piece probably belonged to a son-in-law's family near Elizabethtown, Kentucky. It was not made in 1790, as the words on the face state, but probably dates to 1825 to 1830. The clockmaker, Hugh Gunning, was established in Elizabethtown at the time and died in 1836. And a little more about some of the items in the room. There's the chairs. Circa 1850, the Todd family owned these 6 side chairs with black horsehair seats, woven with cotton or silk, and the hair from horses' tails. Horsehair fabric was lustrous and durable. The Todds owned many chairs as well as mahogany sofas, which would have allowed them to arrange different rooms to accommodate guests. The sofa in this room is a family piece, but may not have been used in the house. The green cloth table, the center table, belonged to the Todd family. Tables like this were important pieces in informal parlors like this one. There's also a portrait of Robert Todd, a print of Lord Nelson, and a print of Sir Walter Scott. And we're now moving into the dining room, and just a few things around here. There's a portrait of Mary Humphreys, who was basically Mary Todd Lincoln's step-grandmother. It says Mary Todd admired her sophisticated, well-educated step-grandmother. And there's a description of the sideboard. Circa 1840, Robert Todd owned a sideboard, but this mahogany piece belonged to his daughter Emily. Used to store and display dinnerware, sideboards reflected their owner's wealth and social status. There's a silver tea set, 1836 to 1840. The Todds purchased this tea set with money received through the estate of Betsy's uncle Samuel Brown. The inscription reads E.L. Todd from Dr. Samuel Brown. There's also a cup and saucer set, 1840s. The Todd family owned this hand-painted china. Based on the cups, saucers, and small plates that have survived, it may have been a breakfast or dessert set. This kind of specialization reflected the family's wealth, social position, and awareness of mealtime etiquette. The china Mary Lincoln chose for the White House in 1861 included breakfast and dessert services. And the silver fork, it notes 1835 to 1845. This coined silver fork belonged to Robert and Elizabeth Betsy Todd. The monogram on the handle combines the initials of their first and last names, R.E.T. The silver was made by J.W. Beebe & Co., a New York firm formed in 1844. The term coin describes silver made of roughly 90% silver and 10% copper. Yeah, there's the fork right there. So that's the dining room, and some Mary Todd Lincoln and family related items. And we're about to take a quick look into the pantry beside the dining room, and it was one of the few rooms that actually had a little rope, so you couldn't go in there, but you could kind of look over into it. One great thing about these self-guided tours, this was by far the most open I've seen the Mary Todd Lincoln House. It was very accessible. I don't want to say you could go in there and touch things, but I mean, you could. Obviously, don't do that. But it was just very, very open, very accessible. And we've toured the Mary Todd Lincoln House many times, and this was just one of the more pleasant experiences we've had there. They still had staff around to talk and answer questions. And we're about to go into the twin parlors. When you come into the front door, this would be the main room on your left. And just a little bit of information about the Mary Todd and Abraham Lincoln items in the twin parlors. There's a portrait of Mary Todd Lincoln sometime after 1862, and it says the oil portrait of Mary Lincoln. It depicts the First Lady with some of her favorite fashion accessories, roses and the seed pearl earrings she wore in some photographs. Although aging has altered the painting's colors, it is possible that Mary's dress is one of the dark colors she wore when in mourning. And there's replica White House dinner plate, 1861. Mary Lincoln used funds appropriated by Congress to purchase china for the White House State Dining Room. The plate shows the design she chose. The originals were French porcelain plates, hand-painted in a pattern that combined a patriotic symbol, the bald eagle, with a trendy shade of purple known as sulfurino. There was also a porcelain vegetable dish, 1865. After her husband's re-election in 1864, Mary Lincoln ordered new china for the state dining room. Invoices from merchant James Kerr describe it as white with a delicate buff border and burnished gold lines, and show that it was delivered February 1865. And also a porcelain platter that belonged to Mary Lincoln is noted. And there's a brief note about that desk. They're not sure where the Todd family purchased it, and Robert Todd Lincoln Beckwith, Mary and Abraham's last descendant, donated the piece to the museum. And the direct Lincoln line, I think the last one died in 1980. I've got a video on Hildene in Vermont up elsewhere, along with lots of other Lincoln-related videos. But yeah, very interesting how the family turned out. Also, a couple of portraits of other Todd members here, and that's an interesting story. Pretty much all of her siblings sided with the South, and those are portraits. One of those guys died at Shiloh. I've been to the spot where he died, and the other brother is actually buried in Elizabethtown. So, and I've written about those on my blog. Just something interesting there to think about. And much of the Todd family is buried very close by in the Lexington Cemetery. And by the piano there in that area in the twin parlors, you could push a button and hear "Home Sweet Home," obviously a very popular song during the Civil War. And we're going up the stairs to the second floor. The third floor is cut off. I think they use it for storage and that kind of thing. But we're making our way up to the second floor on our self-guided tour, and just a few things you'll see around this room identified on the display cards. There's a portrait of Elizabeth Todd Edwards, and this portrait shows Mary's oldest sister in her later years. In 1831, Elizabeth married Ninian Edwards, a student at Lexington's Transylvania University and the son of Illinois' first territorial governor. After her graduation, the couple moved to Illinois and eventually settled in Springfield. There's also a portrait of Abraham Lincoln after 1860. This print, as a young man, was probably based on one that was painted during the 1860 presidential election. Abraham is thought to have grown his beard after the election. And I think this is pretty cool, a tablecloth fragment. This piece of cloth is from a tablecloth used at the meal served after Mary and Abraham Lincoln's wedding. The couple decided on Sunday morning, November 4th, 1842, to marry that evening. The term breakfast in the handwritten caption refers to the meal served after the ceremony. Mary's sister, Frances, recalled that the Lincolns' wedding was followed by a supper. And then there's a portrait of Robert Todd. And, so anyway, some information there about what you can see in the parents' room. And you can tell there's going to be a bit of a crowd here. Several people kind of wandered in shortly after we did, and they were kind of walking around too. They had great staff here this day, though, who were enthusiastic and excited to talk all about Lincoln, as am I most of the time. And again, like I mentioned, I've got several other Lincoln-related videos up if you want to check those out. And glad to get a Mary Todd Lincoln video up from the house here in Lexington. Oh, there was the mention of Transylvania University here in Lexington. Jefferson Davis, John Hunt Morgan, several heavyweights in the Civil War went there. And I always wonder if Mary Todd Lincoln ever, history doesn't show anywhere where Mary Todd Lincoln ever met Jefferson Davis or John Hunt Morgan, but they lived, they hung out in the same area, so I'm thinking they probably did at some point. And I just would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when those conversations may have happened. And just a quick peek up the third floor stairs there, and then we're going to go into the daughter's bedroom. Then I mentioned there's a Bible from 1853 on display. Elodie Todd Dawson owned this Bible. Born in 1844, she was the fourth of Betsy and Robert Todd's daughters. In 1861, she visited her sister Martha in Selma, Alabama, where she met her future husband, Nathaniel Dawson. She wrote a tribute to her brother in her Bible. There's a photograph of Elodie Todd Dawson, and she was a staunch Confederate supporter. Early in the war, she and her sister Martha helped to sew a flag for the Magnolia Cadets, an infantry company in Selma, Alabama, led by her future husband, Nathaniel. During the war, she sewed items for Confederate soldiers, and after the war, she led the effort to erect a Confederate monument in Selma. There's a photograph of Martha Todd White. Martha Todd White was the second of Betsy and Robert Todd's 5 daughters. She was born in 1833. She married Clement White in 1852 and moved to Selma. In 1864, newspaper stories that she had smuggled gold, medicine, and other supplies to the South were public relations nightmares for the Lincolns. There's a photograph of a flag that Elodie Todd and Martha Todd helped to make. A photograph of that flag that was mentioned previously. And there's also a cannonball fragment, circa 1863. After her husband's death in the Battle of Chickamauga, Emily Helm collected items related to his service in the Confederate Army. One of those was the fragment of a cannonball she believed killed him. To honor his memory, she created a display of the cannonball, his sword, and other mementos in her home. And we're about to make our way over to Mary's bedroom. And there's a secretary. This desk is thought to be a Todd family piece. A cousin recalled studying with Mary, who was a good student. She began her academic career at a school run by Episcopalian minister John Ward and continued at one operated by Charlotte Mentella. And there's a miniature portrait of Charlotte Mentella. This painting depicts Mary's teacher, Charlotte, and her husband, Waldemar, immigrated from France to the U.S. around 1795. In the 1820s, Charlotte opened a school for young ladies about 2 miles from the Todds' Main Street home. Mary attended from 1832 to 1836, gaining knowledge and skills that served her well as an adult. And there's porcelain perfume bottles. I love these. These bottles are 2 of several pieces of Meissen porcelain owned by Mary Lincoln. She may have purchased them when traveling to Germany in 1870. Named after the small German town where it is made, Meissen was the first European hard-paste porcelain. There's also a print of Mary Todd Lincoln. The artist and date of this portrait are not known, but the image may be based on an 1866 print of the Lincoln family. In those views, Mary is often dressed in plainer clothing than the evening attire shown in many photographs. And there's a portrait of Mary Todd Lincoln, 1828. This portrait is a photographic copy of one painted by Mary's niece, Catherine Helm, based on photographs and family stories. One of several Catherine painted in the 1920s, this one was commissioned by Harry Bullock, who donated it to the Lincoln Memorial University. And that's in Harrogate, Tennessee. I've got a video up about that elsewhere. A great place, by the way. And now we're going to go across the hall into the room that's labeled the guest bedroom. And there's several. I always think of this as almost like the main event room. I like it a lot. It notes that there is a print depicting Abraham Lincoln's assassination, 1865 to 1879, published by the Philadelphia printer Alfred Parazin. This image is typical of images created after the assassination and incorrectly show the president in a standing position. Eyewitness accounts state that he slumped over after being shot in the head by John Wilkes Booth, who then used the knife to stab Major Henry Rathbone and jump out of the presidential box to the stage. There's a print depicting Abraham Lincoln's deathbed, published by the popular printmakers Currier and Ives. This image includes some incorrect details. Mary Lincoln was at the house where the wounded president was taken after the shooting, but she spent most of the night in a parlor visiting her husband every hour or so. Tad Lincoln was not present, and it is uncertain how long theater companion Clara Harris stayed. There's a Tower of London booklet, circa 1870. This souvenir booklet, signed by Mary Lincoln, documents a trip to the Tower of London in 1870. After the Lincoln estate was settled in 1868, Mary and her youngest son Tad traveled to Europe for 3 years. While Tad attended school in Germany, Mary visited Italy and France. During the summers, they traveled together, and in the fall of 1870, they moved their home base to England. And there's a bonnet, 1865 to 75. Mary Lincoln wore black clothing almost exclusively after her husband's death. Etiquette books instructed women to demonstrate their grief through their attire, and the widows were expected to wear black for the longest period of time before transitioning to gray, purple, or white. Mary owned this bonnet and the fan beneath it. And there's a mourning badge. This badge is made of tintype of a photograph taken of Mary Lincoln around 1862, attached to a black velvet rosetta. Making badges with small photographs of the deceased was a common funerary practice at the time Mary died, and this one may have been made for her funeral in 1882. So yeah, just a ton of info there. And by the way, I love this painting of Mary Lincoln. I think it's just colorful and nice and pleasant, and it's always been displayed here. It's just a great painting. There's that bonnet that we mentioned earlier. I know in the past they've actually displayed a dress of Mary's, and I believe they even have a program from Ford's Theater. It seems like I've seen that here before. And they kind of rotate their collection in and out, but this is usually where you see the really cool stuff in this room, and I always look forward to it when I visit the home. And we're next going to see the washroom and the children's bedroom. We kind of skipped over those earlier, but yeah, going through the washroom. And then in the children's bedroom, there's a print of the Lincoln family, 1964. This print portrays the Lincoln family during the first year that they lived in the White House. The Lincolns never sat for a family portrait, but artists used photographs to create them. This post-1880 image was published by the lithograph firm Kurz and Allison, which created similar portraits of other presidents and their families and reprinted in 1964. And there's a photograph of Willie Lincoln, 1860. The Lincoln's third son was born in 1850 and named after one of Mary's brother-in-laws. Described by observers as intelligent, frank, and loving, Willie died in February 1862 from what was probably typhoid fever. There's a silver mug, 1862. James N. Muller of Baltimore gave this mug to Tad Lincoln following the death of his brother Willie. Muller was the supervising inspector of steamboats for the 3rd Military District in 1861. And there's a photograph of Tad Lincoln, 1860. Born in 1853, Tad Lincoln was named after Abraham's father. Energetic and mischievous, Tad and his antics figure in the memories of numerous observers of the Lincoln White House. After traveling in Europe with his mother, he died of a lung condition at age 18. And there's a print of the Lincoln family, 1870 to 1875, based on a painting by Francis Schell. This engraving shows the family posed in front of a framed picture of Willie Lincoln.
Cool. Where would they load the firewood?
There is a spot underneath, specifically for those little ovens under there. So it's kind of like a French design. So the man who built the house was French, and so he brought his, architectural style. And there's not a lot of houses in Kentucky that had an oven like that. It's kind of like those weird little specificities. But when they...
Yeah, and then I ended the video with just a quick glimpse through the gift shop. The nice lady running the place let us know that was actually part of the home, and they're just kind of utilizing it for the gift shop. So there was some kitchen work going on in there, which I thought was pretty cool. But we're leaving the Mary Todd Lincoln House. Yeah, get a good look at it here on the right. I hope you enjoyed that. I tried to go room to room. Tried to keep it brief and just give you a good look at the Mary Todd Lincoln House in Lexington, Kentucky. You should check it out. Thanks.